The hallways of Westridge Academy always felt too big, too fancy, and too cold for Michael. As one of the few black students at this fancy private school, he often felt like a fish swimming in the wrong pond. The marble floors shined so bright he could almost see his reflection in them. Students rushed past in expensive uniforms that their parents bought without thinking twice about the cost. Michael was different. He got into this school because of his brains, not his family's money. His scholarship covered the tuition, but it couldn't buy the comfort of fitting in. "Just keep your head down and focus on your grades," his mom would tell him every morning before he headed off to school. She worked 2 jobs so he could have the right uniform and school supplies. Her tired eyes always lit up with pride when she looked at him. "You're going places, baby, don't you forget it." But it was hard not to forget when the other kids made it clear he didn't belong. They never said it directly. They were too well-bred for that. Instead, they showed it in the empty seats beside him at lunch, in the group projects where no one wanted to be his partner, and in the birthday parties he never got invited to. The worst was music class. Most kids had been taking private lessons since they were 5 or 6 years old. They could play piano or flute or guitar like they were born with the instruments in their hands. Michael had never even held an instrument before coming to Westridge. His old school didn't have a music program. They were lucky to have enough textbooks for everyone. But something strange happened whenever the school orchestra practiced. Michael couldn't help but stop and listen. It was the violin that caught his attention most. The way it could sound happy one moment and sad the next. How it could whisper or shout or sing. Something about that wooden instrument with 4 simple strings spoke to him in a way nothing else at this school did. One day after school, Michael wandered into the empty music room. The late afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows, making dust particles dance in the air. Display cases lined the walls, filled with instruments that probably cost more than everything his family owned put together. He walked slowly toward the violin display, his backpack heavy with homework that would keep him up late again. Behind the glass, 5 violins rested on velvet stands. They looked magical to him, smooth wood curved like the human body, delicate strings waiting to be played. "What are you doing in here?" The sharp voice made Michael jump. Mr. Wilson, the music teacher, stood in the doorway with his arms crossed. He was tall and thin with gray hair that seemed to be running away from his forehead. His eyes were small behind his glasses, and they rarely showed kindness when looking at Michael. "Nothing, sir. Just looking." Michael stepped back from the display. Mr. Wilson walked into the room, his leather shoes clicking against the floor. "Interested in the violins, are you?" His mouth curved into what might have been a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "They're nice," Michael said quietly, already backing toward the door. "You know," Mr. Wilson said, tapping his finger against the glass case, "the school is having its annual talent showcase next month. Students can borrow instruments to practice with." He paused, looking Michael up and down. "Perhaps you'd like to try your hand at the violin? Show everyone what you can do." Something in the teacher's tone should have warned Michael. The challenge wasn't friendly. But all Michael heard was an opportunity to hold one of those beautiful instruments, to try and make it sing the way he heard others do. "Could I really borrow one to practice?" he asked, his voice giving away his excitement. Mr. Wilson's smile widened. "Of course. We're all about equal opportunity here at Westridge." He unlocked the case and lifted out the smallest violin. "This should be about your size. The showcase is in 4 weeks. That's plenty of time to prepare, wouldn't you say?" Michael carefully took the violin, amazed at how light it felt. "Yes, sir. Thank you." He didn't notice the other teachers watching from the hallway or hear their quiet laughter as he walked away cradling the instrument like a treasure. He didn't know that in the teacher's lounge, Mr. Wilson was already describing how funny it would be when the scholarship kid made a fool of himself on stage. All Michael knew was that for the first time since coming to this school, he felt like he had found something that might make him belong. Michael walked home that day with the violin case clutched tightly in his hand. The afternoon sun warmed his back as his mind raced with excitement. He had never felt so light, so hopeful since starting at Westridge Academy. When he pushed open the door to the small apartment he shared with his mom, the smell of cooking rice filled the air. His mother looked up from the stove, her tired eyes widening at the sight of the instrument case. "What's that you got there?" she asked, wiping her hands on her faded apron. It's a violin, Mom. Mr. Wilson said I could borrow it for the talent showcase next month. Michael placed the case carefully on the kitchen table and unlatched it. The violin nestled inside looked even more beautiful in their home's warm light. His mother came closer, her brow furrowed. A violin? Baby, do you know how to play that thing? Not yet, Michael admitted, but I can learn. There are videos online. I can practice every day after homework. His mother sighed, worry lines appearing around her eyes. Instruments like that take years to learn properly. The showcase is in a month. I don't want you to be disappointed. I won't be, Michael said with the confident stubbornness only a 12-year-old could muster. I just need to try. What Michael didn't tell his mother was how the other kids had looked at him when Mr. Wilson handed him the violin. How Tommy had whispered, "This should be good," to his friends, making them snicker. Michael didn't mention the way Mr. Wilson's lips had curled up at the corners, like he was enjoying a private joke. Later that night, after finishing his math homework, Michael sat on his bed with the violin balanced awkwardly under his chin. He had watched 3 tutorial videos already, taking careful notes about hand positions and how to hold the bow. His first attempt to play a note produced a sound like a cat being stepped on. Down the hall, his mom's voice called out, "Everything okay in there?" "Fine, Mom. Just practicing," Michael answered, his cheeks burning with embarrassment, even though no one had witnessed his failure. The next day at school, Michael found a quiet corner of the library during lunch break to watch more violin tutorials on the school computers. He didn't notice Ms. Chen, the new English teacher, watching him with curious eyes from the biography section. In music class that afternoon, Mr. Wilson was discussing the upcoming showcase with undisguised enthusiasm. "We have quite the lineup this year," he announced to the class. "Piano performances, our flute quartet, and even a few unexpected entries." His eyes landed on Michael, who sank lower in his seat. After class, Michael overheard Mr. Wilson talking to Mrs. Baker, the history teacher, by the water fountain. "You should have seen his face when I offered him the violin," Mr. Wilson chuckled, "like I was handing him a golden ticket. Can you imagine what he'll sound like? We'll be lucky if the strings survive." "Isn't that a bit mean-spirited?" Mrs. Baker asked, though she was smiling too. "It's a valuable lesson," Mr. Wilson replied. "Some people need to learn where they belong." Michael froze, the water fountain forgotten. A cold feeling spread through his chest as the teacher's words sank in. This hadn't been a kind offer, it was a setup. They expected him to fail, wanted him to fail. That night, Michael practiced until his fingertips were sore and red. Every screech of the bow made him wince, but he kept going. He played the same simple scale over and over until his mother knocked gently on his door. "It's almost midnight, honey. You need sleep for school tomorrow." Michael lowered the violin, suddenly aware of how tired his arms felt. "Did it sound any better?" he asked. His mother hesitated, then smiled. "It sounded like someone who's not giving up. That's the most beautiful sound there is." As he carefully placed the violin back in its case, Michael made a decision. He wouldn't give Mr. Wilson the satisfaction of seeing him fail. He didn't know how yet, but somehow he was going to learn to play this violin, and he was going to play it well enough to wipe that smirk off his teacher's face. What started as humiliation had become a challenge, and Michael never backed down from a challenge. The next few days were tough for Michael. His fingers hurt from pressing down on the violin strings. The tips were red and sore, and his left shoulder ached from holding the instrument in place. But every morning before school, and every night after finishing homework, he practiced. His mom found him one evening in the bathroom, soaking his fingers in cool water. "You're pushing yourself too hard," she said, gently drying his hands with a soft towel. "Maybe this isn't worth it." Michael shook his head. "It is worth it, Mom. I'm getting better. Listen." He picked up the violin and played a simple scale. The notes weren't perfect, but they were clearer than before. His mother's eyes widened slightly. "That doesn't sound half bad," she admitted. "But why is this so important to you? There'll be other chances to perform." Michael hesitated. He hadn't told her about overhearing the teachers, about knowing this was all a joke at his expense. "I just need to do this," he said finally. That weekend, Michael discovered a small music shop a few blocks from their apartment. The sign above the door read, "Rodriguez Music," in faded gold letters. Inside, instruments hung from the walls and filled glass cases. The shop smelled of wood polish and old books. An old man with thick glasses looked up from behind the counter. "Can I help you, young man?" "I'm learning violin," Michael said, holding up his case, "but I'm not very good." The old man came around the counter. His back was bent with age, but his eyes were sharp. "Let me hear you play." Michael felt his stomach tighten with nervousness, but he opened his case and carefully took out the violin. He positioned it under his chin the way the YouTube videos had shown him and played the basic scale he'd been practicing. The old man listened without expression. When Michael finished, the man said, "Your wrist is too stiff. Your bow hold needs work. But you have something many students don't." "What's that?" Michael asked. "Determination," the old man said. "I can see it in your eyes. How long have you been playing?" "About a week," Michael admitted. The old man's eyebrows shot up. "A week? And you already have somewhat clear notes? That's unusual." Michael explained about the talent showcase, carefully leaving out the part about the teacher's cruelty. He just said he wanted to surprise everyone. "I'm Mr. Rodriguez," the old man said. "I've been teaching violin for 50 years. Come back tomorrow at 9. I'll give you a proper lesson." "I can't pay for lessons," Michael said, his heart sinking. Mr. Rodriguez waved his hand dismissively. "Who said anything about payment? I'm old and bored. Teaching a student with actual potential will be payment enough." The next morning, Michael was waiting outside the shop at 8:45. The lessons with Mr. Rodriguez were nothing like the gentle YouTube tutorials. The old man was strict, correcting every small mistake. But by the end of that first 2-hour session, Michael could play a simple folk song. "Practice this until your fingers remember it without your brain telling them what to do," Mr. Rodriguez instructed. "Come back next weekend." During the week, Michael practiced in every spare moment. He arrived at school early to find empty classrooms where he could play. He stayed late, hiding in the rarely used music practice rooms in the basement. A few times, he spotted Mr. Wilson watching him with a satisfied smirk, clearly enjoying the screeching sounds Michael still sometimes made. But what Mr. Wilson didn't know was that Michael was improving. Every day, the notes became clearer. The simple folk song began to sound like actual music. "You're picking this up faster than anyone I've seen," Mr. Rodriguez told him during their second lesson. "You have a natural ear for pitch, with a few years of proper training." "I don't have years," Michael interrupted. "The showcase is in 3 weeks." Mr. Rodriguez thought for a moment. "Then we need to be smart about this. You won't be playing Paganini by then, but we can prepare something that will surprise them." He reached for a one music book on a nearby shelf. "Let's try something everyone knows, but with a twist that shows off what you can do." As Michael left the shop that day with new sheet music tucked into his case, he felt something he hadn't felt since starting at Westridge Academy: hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could turn this cruel joke into something no one would ever forget. 2 weeks before the showcase, Michael was practicing in one of the basement music rooms after school. The piece Mr. Rodriguez had chosen was still challenging, but Michael could now play through most of it without major mistakes. His fingers moved faster across the strings, finding the notes almost by memory. He was so focused that he didn't notice the door opening. A soft gasp made him stop and turn around. Ms. Chen, the new English teacher, stood watching him with wide eyes. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I heard music and was curious." Michael lowered the violin, suddenly embarrassed. "It's okay, I was just practicing." Ms. Chen stepped into the room. "That was simple gifts, wasn't it? But with variations." Michael nodded, surprised she recognized it. "How long have you been playing?" she asked. "About 2 weeks," Michael admitted. Ms. Chen's eyebrows shot up. 2 weeks? That's incredible progress. Most beginners can barely hold the instrument properly after 2 weeks. Michael shrugged, not sure what to say. He wasn't used to teachers at Westridge giving him compliments. "Are you preparing for the showcase?" Ms. Chen asked, sitting down on a nearby chair. "Yes, Mr. Wilson let me borrow a violin." Something flickered across Ms. Chen's face. "I see. And he's been helping you prepare." Michael looked down at his shoes. "Not exactly." "Would you like some help?" "I played violin through college." "I'm not a professional, but I might be able to give you some pointers." Michael hesitated. Could he trust her? She was new, but she was still a teacher at Westridge. She might be in on the joke too. As if reading his mind, Ms. Chen said softly, "I've noticed how some of the staff treat certain students here. It's not right." Michael looked up at her, surprised by her directness. "I've also noticed you practicing every chance you get," she continued. "That kind of dedication deserves support, not mockery." Something in her voice convinced Michael she was sincere. "I could use some help with the middle section," he admitted. "The finger positions are tricky." For the next hour, Ms. Chen worked with him on that difficult passage. Her approach was different from Mr. Rodriguez's, where he was strict and demanding. She was patient and encouraging. By the end of their impromptu lesson, Michael had mastered the section that had been giving him trouble. "You have a natural talent," Ms. Chen told him as they packed up. "But more importantly, you have heart. I can hear it in your playing." "Will you be at the showcase?" Michael asked. "I wouldn't miss it," she promised with a smile. That evening, Michael told Mr. Rodriguez about Ms. Chen during his lesson at the music shop. "Two teachers are better than one," the old man said approvingly. "But be careful at that school. Not everyone will be happy to see you succeed." "I know," Michael said quietly. Mr. Rodriguez studied him for a moment, then went to a cabinet behind the counter. He returned with a small bottle of liquid and a soft cloth. "This is for your violin," he explained. "Clean it well and apply this to the wood. It will help the sound. And here." He handed Michael a new set of strings. "These are better quality than what you have. They'll make a difference in your tone." "I can't accept these," Michael protested. "They must be expensive." "Consider it an investment," Mr. Rodriguez said firmly. "I've taught hundreds of students over the years. Few had your potential. Fewer still had your determination." That night, Michael carefully cleaned the violin and changed the strings as Mr. Rodriguez had shown him. When he played the first notes with the new strings, even his mother stopped what she was doing in the kitchen to listen. "That sounds beautiful, baby," she said from the doorway of his room, like a real musician. The next day at school, Michael noticed something had changed. Word had somehow spread that he was actually learning to play the violin. Some students watched him with curiosity instead of mockery. Others seemed disappointed that their expected entertainment might not materialize. During music class, Mr. Wilson called on him unexpectedly. "Michael, perhaps you'd like to give us a preview of your showcase performance." The room fell silent. Michael felt every eye on him. This was a test, a chance for Mr. Wilson to embarrass him in front of everyone before the main event. Michael took a deep breath and walked to the front of the class, violin in hand. He thought of Mr. Rodriguez's strict but encouraging words. He remembered Ms. Chen's kindness. He positioned the violin under his chin, raised the bow, and began to play. He chose the opening of his showcase piece, just enough to show what he could do without revealing everything. The clear, confident notes filled the classroom. He watched Mr. Wilson's smug smile fade, replaced by confusion, then disbelief. When Michael finished, the class was silent for a moment before breaking into surprised applause. As he returned to his seat, Michael caught Ms. Chen watching from the hallway, a proud smile on her face. The game had changed. Mr. Wilson had meant to set him up for failure, but now Michael had a different plan. The showcase wouldn't be his humiliation, it would be his triumph. Word spread quickly through Westridge Academy after Michael's surprise performance in music class. Students who had never spoken to him before suddenly said hello in the hallways. A few even asked if he was taking private lessons, seeming genuinely impressed by how quickly he'd learned. Mr. Wilson, however, was not pleased. Michael noticed the music teacher watching him with narrowed eyes during classes. Twice that week, Michael arrived at his usual practice room to find it mysteriously reserved for other students who never showed up. "He's trying to stop you from practicing," Ms. Chen said when Michael told her about it. They were sitting in her classroom during lunch break, where she had been helping him with a particularly tricky part of his showcase piece. "I know," Michael replied, carefully putting his violin back in its case. "But I'm still getting better. I practice at home and at Mr. Rodriguez's shop." Ms. Chen smiled. "I'd like to meet this Mr. Rodriguez. He sounds like quite the teacher." "He's the best," Michael said. "He doesn't sugarcoat anything, but he believes in me." "As he should," Ms. Chen said. "I've been teaching for 5 years, and I've rarely seen anyone learn an instrument so quickly." That afternoon, instead of trying to find an empty practice room, Michael headed to the library. He found a quiet corner and pulled out his music theory book. Mr. Rodriguez insisted that understanding the theory behind the music was just as important as practicing. He was deep in concentration when a shadow fell across his page. Michael looked up to see the school principal, Dr. Parker, standing over him. "Michael, isn't it?" the principal asked. He was a tall man with salt and pepper hair and a serious face that rarely smiled. "Yes, sir," Michael replied, his heart suddenly beating faster. Was he in trouble? Had Mr. Wilson complained about him? "I hear you're performing at the showcase next week," Dr. Parker said. "Mr. Wilson mentioned you've been surprising everyone with your progress." Michael couldn't read the principal's expression. "I've been working really hard, sir." Dr. Parker nodded slowly. "So I hear. The showcase is an important event for our school. Many parents and potential donors attend." He paused, studying Michael. "I trust your performance will reflect well on Westridge." Before Michael could respond, Dr. Parker continued, "I understand you've been having trouble finding practice space. Feel free to use the grand piano room beside my office. It's usually empty after 4 o'clock." Michael blinked in surprise. The grand piano room was the nicest practice space in the school, usually reserved for advanced students. "Thank you, sir." Dr. Parker gave a brief nod and walked away, leaving Michael wondering what had just happened. That weekend, Michael arrived at Mr. Rodriguez's shop with his sheet music full of notes from Ms. Chen and news about the principal's unexpected offer. "Be careful," Mr. Rodriguez warned as they tuned the violin. "People change their tune when they see which way the wind is blowing. Yesterday's mockers become today's supporters once they see you might succeed." Michael thought about this as they began the lesson. Was the principal only being nice because he thought Michael might actually be good? Did it matter, as long as he got to use the practice room? "Focus," Mr. Rodriguez said sharply, tapping his cane on the floor. "Your mind is wandering. The showcase is 1 week away. We need to perfect your performance." For the next 2 hours, they worked harder than ever. Mr. Rodriguez pushed Michael to his limits, making him play sections over and over until they were flawless. By the end, Michael's arms ached and his fingertips throbbed. "Now play the entire piece," Mr. Rodriguez instructed. "No stops, no matter what happens." Michael took a deep breath, positioned the violin, and began to play. The familiar melody of Simple Gifts filled the shop, but with the complex variations they had added. His fingers flew across the strings, finding each note with growing confidence. When he reached the difficult middle section, he remembered Ms. Chen's advice and slowed down just enough to maintain clarity. As the final notes faded, Michael looked up to see Mr. Rodriguez wiping his eyes behind his thick glasses. "That was beautiful," the old man said softly. "You've done in 3 weeks what most students cannot do in 3 years." Michael felt a warm glow of pride spread through his chest. "Do you think I'm ready for the showcase?" "Almost," Mr. Rodriguez said, his usual strictness returning. "There's still work to do on the final variation, but yes, you're nearly ready." He hesitated, then added, "I'd like to come hear you play." "Really?" Michael couldn't hide his surprise. Mr. Rodriguez rarely left his shop. "Really?" the old man confirmed. "It's not every day one of my students gets to prove so many people wrong." That night, Michael practiced until his mother insisted he go to bed. As he carefully put away his violin, he realized something had changed. He was no longer practicing to avoid humiliation. He was practicing because he loved the music, loved the feeling of creating something beautiful with his own hands. The violin that had been meant as a tool of mockery had become a source of joy. And in 1 week, everyone at Westridge Academy would hear exactly what he could do with it. The day of the showcase arrived with a mix of sunshine and clouds, much like Michael's feelings. His stomach was a knot of excitement and nerves as he carefully packed his violin for school. He had practiced until past midnight, polishing every note of his performance. "You look smart," his mother said, straightening his collar. She had ironed his best white shirt until it was crisp and perfect. It wasn't new, nothing they owned was, but it was clean and neat. "Are you sure you'll be able to come tonight?" Michael asked. His mother usually worked evenings at her second job. "Wild horses couldn't keep me away," she said, cupping his face in her hands. "I got someone to cover my shift." I wouldn't miss my son's first performance for anything in this world. The school day passed in a blur. Michael couldn't focus on his classes. His mind kept running through the music, his fingers twitching in his lap as he mentally practiced the difficult passages. During lunch, Ms. Chen found him sitting alone in the cafeteria. "Nervous?" she asked, sliding into the seat across from him. Michael nodded, pushing his untouched food around his plate. "That's normal," she assured him. "Even professionals get nervous before performances. It means you care." "What if I mess up?" Michael whispered. "Everyone will laugh." "Look at me," Ms. Chen said firmly. Michael raised his eyes to meet hers. "You won't mess up. You've put in the work. But even if you do hit a wrong note, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you get up on that stage and play with your whole heart." After school, Michael headed to the auditorium for the pre-showcase setup. The space looked different, with all the chairs arranged in neat rows and colorful stage lights hanging from above. A grand piano sat on one side of the stage, gleaming under the lights. Backstage, other performers were warming up or pacing nervously. Michael found a quiet corner and carefully took out his violin. As he tuned it, he noticed Mr. Wilson talking to a group of parents near the entrance. The music teacher was smiling and gesturing grandly, clearly in his element as the showcase organizer. At 6 o'clock, people began filling the auditorium. From his spot behind the curtain, Michael peeked out at the growing audience. He spotted his mother entering, wearing her good blue dress, the one she saved for special occasions. She found a seat near the middle, looking around with a mixture of pride and uncertainty in a place she'd never been before. To Michael's surprise, Mr. Rodriguez was there too, sitting near the back, his cane resting against his leg. Even more surprising was seeing Dr. Parker, the principal, stop to shake the old music teacher's hand as if they knew each other. At 6:30 sharp, the lights dimmed and Mr. Wilson walked onto the stage to enthusiastic applause. "Welcome to Westridge Academy's annual spring showcase," he announced, his voice booming through the microphone. "Tonight, our talented students will demonstrate their musical accomplishments. We have a wonderful program for you, featuring piano, flute, cello, and even," his eyes flickered backstage where Michael stood, "some unexpected instruments." The showcase began with a piano quartet playing a complex classical piece. They were followed by a flute solo, a cello performance, and more piano pieces. Each student performed well, receiving warm applause from the audience. As Michael's turn grew closer, his heart hammered in his chest. He wiped his sweaty palms on his pants and took deep breaths like Mr. Rodriguez had taught him. "You're going to be amazing," a voice whispered. Michael turned to see Ms. Chen giving him an encouraging smile. "Just play like you did in practice yesterday. That's all you need to do." Our next performer, Mr. Wilson's voice came from the stage, is somewhat new to his instrument. Michael will be playing the violin. There was polite applause as Michael walked onto the stage, violin in hand. Under the bright lights, he could barely make out the audience, just shadowy figures in rows. But he knew his mother was there watching. Mr. Rodriguez was there too, and Ms. Chen was standing in the wings, giving him a thumbs up. Mr. Wilson stood to the side, a faint smirk playing on his lips. He clearly still expected this to go poorly, despite Michael's progress. Michael positioned himself in the center of the stage. The auditorium fell completely silent. He placed the violin under his chin, raised the bow, and closed his eyes for just a moment. In that darkness, he remembered why he was doing this. Not to prove Mr. Wilson wrong, not even to make his mother proud, though that mattered. He was doing this because when he played, the music made him feel like he belonged in this world, exactly as he was. Michael opened his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to play. The first notes of Simple Gifts floated through the auditorium, clear and sweet. As he moved into the first variation, his fingers found each note with precision. The melody rose and fell, telling a story of struggle and perseverance. Michael didn't see Mr. Wilson's smirk fade. He didn't notice the principal's eyebrows rise in surprise or the audience members sitting up straighter in their seats. He was lost in the music, every hour of practice, every moment of doubt and determination flowing through his fingers and into the violin. When he reached the difficult middle section, time seemed to slow down. His bow danced across the strings, creating sounds that filled the space with emotion. For those few minutes, there was no Westridge Academy, no cruel joke, no scholarship student who didn't belong. There was only Michael and his violin, speaking a language everyone could understand. As Michael moved into the final section of his piece, something magical happened. The entire auditorium seemed to hold its breath. Parents who had been checking their phones sat transfixed. Students who had been whispering fell silent. Even the usual creaking of the old auditorium chairs stopped. Michael's eyes were closed now, his body swaying slightly with the music. The final variation was the most complex, full of quick runs and difficult finger positions. Mr. Rodriguez had added this section just a week ago, saying, "If you're going to surprise them completely." Michael's fingers flew across the strings with a confidence that came from countless hours of practice. Each note rang clear and true, building toward the powerful final. As he played the last triumphant notes, he opened his eyes and saw his mother in the audience, tears streaming down her face. The final note hung in the air for a moment of perfect silence. Then the auditorium erupted. The applause started like a thunderclap, sudden and overwhelming. People were standing, clapping wildly. Some were even cheering. In the back row, Mr. Rodriguez was on his feet, nodding with fierce pride. Near the front, Dr. Parker was applauding with genuine enthusiasm, looking at Michael with newfound respect. And to the side of the stage stood Mr. Wilson, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. The music teacher who had handed Michael a violin as a cruel joke just 4 weeks ago now couldn't seem to find words. Michael bowed the way Mr. Rodriguez had taught him, deeply with the violin and bow held properly at his sides. As he straightened, he caught Ms. Chen's eye. She was clapping and mouthing, "I knew you could do it." The applause continued as Michael walked off the stage, his legs shaky from adrenaline and relief. Backstage, other students who had barely spoken to him before now crowded around, asking where he had learned to play like that and how long he had been practicing. Before he could answer, his mother appeared, somehow having found her way backstage. She wrapped him in a tight hug. "Baby, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Your playing made people feel things. That's a rare gift." When she finally released him, Michael saw Mr. Rodriguez making his way toward them, leaning heavily on his cane. "This is my teacher," Michael told his mother proudly. "This is Mr. Rodriguez." The old man shook her hand. "Your son has remarkable talent," he said. "In 40 years of teaching, I've rarely seen anyone progress so quickly." "Thank you for believing in him," Michael's mother said softly. Their conversation was interrupted by Dr. Parker, who approached with a smile that transformed his usually serious face. "Michael, that was extraordinary," the principal said. "Truly extraordinary. We would like to feature your performance at our fundraising gala next month." And he glanced at Michael's mother. "The school would like to offer Michael a place in our advanced music program with a full scholarship for private lessons." Michael's mother put a hand to her mouth in surprise. "That's very generous," she managed to say. "It's not generosity," Dr. Parker said firmly. "It's recognition of exceptional talent." As they were talking, Mr. Wilson finally approached. The music teacher seemed smaller somehow, his usual confidence replaced by awkward hesitation. He began, then cleared his throat. "That was quite impressive, Michael. I had no idea you had such aptitude." Michael looked straight into the eyes of the teacher who had tried to humiliate him. He thought about all the nights he'd practiced until his fingers hurt, all the mornings he'd woken up early to squeeze in extra practice time. He thought about Miss Chen's kindness and Mr. Rodriguez's strict but caring guidance. "Thank you, Mr. Wilson," he said simply. "Thank you for lending me the violin." The music teacher blinked, clearly unsure if Michael was being sincere or subtly calling him out. Before he could respond, Mr. Rodriguez stepped forward. "Michael will need a better instrument if he's to continue his studies," the old teacher said. "That student violin won't do for much longer." "Of course," Dr. Parker agreed immediately. "We'll arrange something suitable from the school's collection." Later that night, after the showcase had ended and most people had gone home, Michael stood in the empty auditorium with his violin case in hand. Ms. Chen found him there, staring at the now dark stage. "How does it feel?" she asked gently. Michael thought for a moment. "Different," he finally said. "Like I found a piece of myself I didn't know was missing." Ms. Chen smiled. "That's how it feels when you discover your passion. Some people search their whole lives and never find it. I wouldn't have found it without Mr. Wilson trying to embarrass me, Michael said with a small laugh. Isn't that strange? Sometimes our greatest opportunities come disguised as challenges, Miss Chen replied. The important thing is what you do with them. As they walked out of the auditorium together, Michael felt lighter somehow. The violin case in his hand no longer represented someone's cruel joke. It held an instrument that had become an extension of his own voice, a voice that would continue to grow stronger and reach even more people in the years to come. What had started as an attempt to mock him had become the gift that would shape the rest of his life.